Also with me today from the department are Kelly Brown, Deputy Counsel, Maggie Martin, Management Plan Specialist, and Sharon Scantleberry, Docket Supervisor. Einav Hennison, statewide AMA Director, is participating via webinar. We have a court reporter present via webinar to record and transcribe what is being said today, so it's important for speakers to please speak up, speak slowly, so that the court reporter can accurately record your comments. If anyone has difficulty hearing me or a speaker, please let me know. For those in person, if you haven't already done so, please sign the sign-in sheet on the table near the entrance. There are also speaker cards on the table. If you'd like to speak today, please fill out a speaker card if you haven't done so already, and submit your card to Sharon or to Maggie. For those on the webinar, we have provided a link to a virtual speaker card in the chat box and on the screen. The chat box can be opened by clicking the speech bubble icon at the bottom of your screen. If you would like to speak via the webinar today, submit your virtual speaker card and staff will assist you with unmuting when it is your turn to speak. Everyone was muted on entry to the webinar. For those of you participating via telephone and not on the webinar, we will unmute you. If you would like to make a verbal comment, please state and spell your name, and we will unmute you when it is your turn to speak. If you would like to make a comment, please, if you would not like to make a comment, please simply stay silent. We will call on the telephone participants to speak after the webinar participants today. Persons presenting comments at the hearing, whether in person or virtually, will be subject to a 3-minute Sure. We're going to pause briefly. We've lost our feed into our overflow room, so I will pick up at this portion of our meeting. Test, test. Can anybody hear me? Okay. So for the sake of everybody on the line, I'm just going to restart to the portion I think that we lost the feed in the other room. So bear with me if you've already heard this portion. So today we have a court reporter present via webinar to record and transcribe what is being said today. So it is important for speakers to please speak up, speak slowly so that the court reporter can accurately record your comments. If anyone has difficulty hearing me or a speaker, please let me know. For those in person, if you haven't already done so, please sign in the sign-in sheet on the table near the entrance. There are also speaker cards on the table. If you would like to speak today, please fill out a speaker card if you haven't done so already and submit your card to Sharon or Maggie. For those on the webinar, we have provided a link to the virtual speaker card in the chat box and on the screen. The chat box can be opened by clicking the speech bubble icon at the bottom of your screen. If you would like to speak via webinar today, submit your virtual speaker card and staff will assist you with unmuting when it is your turn to speak. Everyone was muted on entry to the webinar. For those participating via telephone and not on the webinar, we will unmute you. If you would like to make a verbal comment, please state and spell your name and we will unmute you when it is your turn to speak. If you would not like to make a comment, please simply stay silent. We will call on the telephone participants to speak after the webinar participants. Persons presenting comments at the hearing, whether in person or virtually, will be subject to a 3-minute time limit to ensure all who wish to speak receive an opportunity to do so. The purpose of this hearing is to provide members of the public the opportunity to make oral and written comments on the proposed management plan for the Pinal Active Management Area for the 4th management period. The proposed plan is available on the department's website, azwater.gov/AMA/management plans. We will not be responding to questions or comments at this hearing today. However, we will do so in writing as part of the formal management plan adoption process. If anyone has any questions or comments on issues or programs that are outside the scope of this hearing, you can contact me or one of our staff after the hearing. The hearing will be conducted in a formal manner. As I mentioned previously, the court reporter is recording everything that's being said. A copy of the transcript of the hearing will be available for review at the department's office and will also be posted on the department's website when it is available. At the conclusion of this hearing, I'll be accepting any written comments or documentary evidence that anyone may wish to submit to the department regarding the proposed management plan. The department will also accept written comments until 5 p.m. today. Written comments submitted up until 5 p.m. today should be submitted to the department's docket supervisor, Sharon Scantlebury, by email to, and I'll spell this, SSCANTLE Bury, BURY, @azwater.gov, or fax at 602-771-8686. A copy of the public notice with Sharon's contact information is posted on the department's website, and her business cards are located on the table near the entrance if you would like one. Within 30 days from today, the director will make and file in the department a written summary and findings with respect to the comments and evidence received at this hearing and prior to 5 p.m. today. If in the findings, the director decides to adopt the management plan, the director will make and file with the department an order adopting the plan pursuant to the findings. Notice of the order will be sent to all persons who signed the attendance sheet today and to all persons who submitted comments or evidence prior to the close of the record. Please make sure you provided your physical or email address to receive a copy of the notice. The director will also publish a summary of the plan, findings, and order of adoption once a week for 2 consecutive weeks in the Casa Grande Dispatch. Pursuant to Arizona Revised Statutes Section 45-571 and 45-114, subsection C. Any person may file a request for rehearing or review of the order of adoption within 30 days after the second publication of the notice. The last day for filing request for rehearing or review will be identified in both the mailed and published notices of the order of adoption. If no one files a timely request for rehearing or review, the plan will become final. If a timely request for rehearing or review is filed, the director will have 60 days after receiving the request to issue a decision on the request. The director may grant a rehearing, grant a review without a rehearing, or deny the request. Any person may seek judicial review of the director's decision to adopt the management plan as provided in Arizona Revised Statutes, section 45-114, subsection C. Within 30 days after the plan becomes final, the department will mail notice of the conservation requirements contained in the plan to all persons who are required to comply with the requirements. Any aggrieved person may request an administrative review of the conservation requirement within 90 days after receiving notice of the requirement as provided by Arizona Revised Statutes, section 45-575, subsection A. A person who requires additional time to comply with a new conservation requirement may request a variance within 90 days after receiving notice of the requirement pursuant to Arizona Revised Statutes, section 45-574, subsection A. I will now turn the hearing over to Natalie Mast, who will describe the proposed plan in greater detail. Natalie?
Thank you, John. Good afternoon. My name is Natalie Mast, and I am the program manager working on the management plans at ADWR. The purpose of this presentation is to present data in support of the proposed management plan and to provide a summary of the comments made by GUAC members. I will also provide a brief overview of the contents of the proposed plan and the changes as compared to the third management plan. If I can get the slide to switch. Thanks, sorry. Could you go one more slide, please? Thank you. The initial draft of the Pinal Active Management Area Fourth Management Plan was published in March 2020. From March to June, ADWR accepted comments and worked to revise the plan in response to those comments. The GUAC comments I will summarize shortly were received in this time period. In June, ADWR published an updated draft incorporating many GUAC member and stakeholder recommendations. On July 14th and 21st, a public notice was published in the Casa Grande Dispatch announcing today's hearing and opening the formal comment period on this plan, which closes today at 5 p.m. ADWR will publish written findings from today's hearing within 30 days, and so long as adoption of the proposed plan occurs within this calendar year, the conservation programs in the plan will go into effect on January 1st, 2023. The recommendations received from GUAC members, thank you. The recommendations received from GUAC members covered a broad range of topics. The full text of those comments is posted on the management plans page on ADWR's website alongside ADWR's response. Where comments pointed to errors or data inconsistencies, we worked to verify the information provided to make corrections. Additional style and data recommendations were incorporated in some cases. The comments received were diverse in nature, but some recurring topics included the Pinal AMA management goal, the historic cropping program, concerns regarding assured water supply, and recommendations for the fifth management plans. The Pinal AMA goal is defined in Arizona Revised Statute, section 45-562, subsection B, and ADWR has not recommended any changes to the goal at this time. One erroneous mention of safe yield in the initial draft was corrected. The historic cropping program is required to be included in the 4MP pursuant to Arizona Revised Statute Section 45-567.02, despite the program having no participants. Basic background information regarding Assured Water Supply Program is provided in the 4MP. Given the complex and dynamic nature of the ongoing conversations regarding the Assured Water Supply challenges in the Pinal AMA, the best source of information will continue to be the Pinal Groundwater Supply Updates page on ADWR's website. Comments regarding the 5th management plans and additional recommendations that were not incorporated at this time have been noted and may be considered as a part of ADWR's ongoing 5th management plans work group process. Next slide, please. I will now provide a brief overview of some data related to the AMA and a summary of the proposed plan. Next slide. Thanks. The Pinal Active Management Area is one of the 4 original active management areas established as a part of the 1980 Groundwater Management Act. It includes the Maricopa-Stanfield, Eloy, Aguirre Valley, Santa Rosa Valley, and Vicol Valley subbasins. This graph shows how groundwater demands have changed over time. The top dark blue line is total statewide groundwater use. The middle green line is total active management area groundwater use. And the bottom light blue line is the Pinal AMA groundwater use. In the Pinal AMA, total groundwater use has been fairly flat, but has increased slowly over time. Additional increases in groundwater use are anticipated in this AMA. The graphs on the screen now show how water use is broken down by sector in the Pinal AMA. The different colors represent the sectors. Dark blue is agriculture, light blue is municipal, green is industrial, and gold is tribal water use estimates. On the left, you see a comparison of how these break down in different geographies. Statewide, on the far left is about 73% agriculture, including Indian agriculture, and the AMAs altogether are about 56%. And the Pinal AMA is about 94%. AMA Ag, or that use that is subject to the AMA conservation requirements, is about 80% of the total water demand in the Pinal AMA. This graph shows the supplies used to meet those demands each year. The Pinal AMA increased its usage of Colorado River water early in the 1990s, but these volumes are expected to decrease. Groundwater use also increased in that time period on the graph, and this is expected to further increase in the future. In analyzing how those supplies and demands impact the AMA as a whole, we turn to the goal of the AMA, which is to allow development of non-irrigation uses and to preserve existing agricultural economies in the active management area for as long as feasible, consistent with the necessity to preserve future water supplies for non-irrigation uses. The blue line on this chart shows overdraft in the AMA, alongside the colored bars which show groundwater demands in each sector: orange for municipal, gray for industrial, green for agricultural, and pink for tribal demand estimates. There is variation in overdraft over time, but more recent trends show total groundwater demands and overdraft increasing in the Pinal AMA. This overdraft can be expected to increase with anticipated reductions to Colorado River water availability and corresponding increases in groundwater pumping in the Pinal AMA. The management plans are one tool that ADWR has to help move each AMA toward its goal. While the Pinal AMA has a unique goal, all of the AMAs have something in common. All of the AMAs can move toward their goals by reducing withdrawals of groundwater. This is precisely what the conservation programs in all of the management plans are designed to do. Statute indicates that these programs should be designed to achieve reductions in withdrawals of groundwater. The proposed management plan contains 11 chapters, many containing data, analysis, and background information. Chapters 4, 5, and 6 also contain the continuing mandatory conservation programs for agricultural, municipal, and industrial water users, respectively. These programs are designed to reduce withdrawals of groundwater. In order to move the Pinal AMA toward its goal, the fourth management plan does include some changes from the third management plan. Some of the changes have to do with data quality, and the analysis of that data, with additional reporting requirements and some audits to ensure the quality of the data that is being provided. ADWR can better assess the effectiveness of the conservation programs in the management plans. We want to be transparent about the use of that data, though, and so we will be expanding upon an existing report to publish our analysis of that and other reported data. The fourth management plan also contains changes to the conservation programs for all three sectors. These changes are intended to be incremental adjustments to increase conservation where we can in the fourth management plans, and to begin conversation on bigger changes to be made in the fifth management plans. These fourth management plan changes include a restructuring of the BMP points systems for the agricultural and municipal sectors and higher points targets for these programs. A change in the turf application rate for turf facilities, an adjustment to the highest 25% of water duties, and several other changes. Finally, I would like to acknowledge the fact that these management plans are very much a team effort with an enormous amount of work put in by my predecessors, by management plans and active management area staff, by other staff from around the department, and with significant input from other state agencies, from GUAC members, and from the regulated community. We would not be here today without the collaborative effort of all of those people and many more, so thank you to all who contributed in any way. With that, thank you for your time and attention, and I will hand it back over to John, who will be calling up speakers.
All right, thank you, Natalie. So that moves us on to comment. So for those participating via the telephone and not the webinar, we are going to unmute you briefly. If you'd like to make a verbal comment, please state and spell your name, and we will unmute you when it is your turn to speak. If you would not like to make a comment, simply stay silent on the line. We will call on the telephone participants to speak after we do the webinar participants. So we will unmute the telephone participants now. Was there anyone who would like to speak from the telephone? If so, just provide your name, spell your name, and then we'll call on you after the webinar participants give their comment. Okay, well, hearing none, I'll call to the telephone participants again. I think I saw it later on in the script. So. And we have a few, so there are a few in-person speaker cards. Please be advised that those presenting comments at this hearing, whether in person or virtually, will be subject to a 3-minute time limit to ensure all who wish to speak receive the opportunity to do so. So I will now begin calling the names of the persons who filled out speaker cards here in person. If you wish to speak and you have not filled out a speaker card, please fill one of the cards on the table near the entrance and submit it to Sharon. When I call your name, please come up to the podium, state your name, identify any person or entity that you represent, and then give your comments. After you've completed your comment, please exit the room so we can rotate additional speakers in from our overflow room. So the first comment card that I have here is Mr. Jim Goldman. Goldman?
My name is Jim Goldman. I reside at on Steel Road, about Palma Corner, south of Coolidge. Dairy farmer, been there for 30 years. All around me now are solar reflectors being put in, thousands of acres of it. My question was, I think Natalie pretty well answered it, what's going to happen to the status 20 years from now, or whatever those age of those reflectors or generators are obsolete, or what are they phased out for any reason? What's going to happen to the groundwater rights? Are they going to remain? They're going to be nullified? What's going to happen? And the other question I had was, is all those thousands of acres that's being taken out and put into solar electricity production, are they being considered in the plan when you talk about increased use of water in the county, because those acres are not being irrigated, and so therefore there's hundreds of acre feet of water that's not being utilized. So I just wonder if it's been considered. That's all my comment was, just questions.
Okay, thank you. And again, we're not going to be responding directly to questions or comments today at the hearing. However, part of the formal process, we will respond in writing.
But I would say that gives you an indication of what's on our people's minds. It won't probably won't affect me anyway. I've got to talk to Type 2 non-irrigation right, which was established 30-some years ago, but I just wanted to clear the air and figure out what's happening.
Thanks, sir. Next, we have Ms. Cindy Compton. No comment? Okay. Mr. Scott Riggins.
My name is Scott Riggins. I am a Pinal County farmer, a independent agricultural groundwater pumper, and an agricultural landowner for the last 35 years. With 3 minutes time, I can see I'm going to have to cut some of these things down. First of all, I also am a member of the GUAC, but I cannot speak to anything that has been recommended by the GUAC, because indeed, there has been nothing recommended by the GUAC to this process. Indeed, there is a serious statutory deficit in the management plan at this time. Ms. Nast made the comment that there is a summary of comments by GUAC members. That doesn't represent activities taken by the GUAC. And in fact, individual members in a government body with open meeting laws can't speak to what the intent of the organization they represent is. I'll refer to statutes 45-421, Administrative Duties of the Groundwater Users Advisory Councils. And it states, the Groundwater Users Advisory Council shall advise the area director for the active management area, make recommendations on groundwater management programs and policies for the active management area, comment to the area director and to the director on draft management plans for the active management area before they are promulgated by the director. That subsection is a shall. We shall do that. This comment that individual GUAC members spoke for the GUAC is totally negated by subsection 5 of the same statute. And it states that the Groundwater Users Advisory Council shall manifest and record its actions by motion, resolution, or other appropriate means. The Pinal GUAC has never had a motion and has never, as a council, made a recommendation to forward this plan. Not one time. There have been numerous calls for individuals to make comment that does not fulfill the statutory obligations. To move on to another issue, and obviously the department has tended to think that that's not the case. They've stated that they've taken care of their statutory obligation through asking members.
Mr. Higgins, I'm afraid your 3 minutes is up.
Pardon me?
I'm afraid your 3 minutes is up.
I haven't spoken for 3 minutes. I haven't spoken for 3 minutes.
I'm afraid your 3 minutes is up.
I have my watch right here. I have not spoken for 3 minutes.
We have a timer as well, and your 3 minutes is up, sir.
Is the hearing officer going to stand for that?
As we've stated, we're not responding to any questions or comments.
I wasn't having a question. I was making a statement. I have not spoken for 3 minutes.
Sir, we're keeping record of the time. This math says it was 3 minutes, and it was 3 minutes.
Let that be noted.
If any other questions or comments or issues that you have, you can submit those in writing
By the end of today.
as part of this process.
Yes. Thank you very much for your time. Okay. Pardon me?
You have, 2 people from the room have given you their 3 minutes, so you have a total of 6 additional minutes.
Thank you very much.
Okay,
Very much appreciate that.
you're welcome. And we are starting the timer.
That's fine.
Okay.
Let me check. Okay, very good. I'm looking at my watch too. Ms. Nast, as I was saying, has spoken to the concept of summaries of GUAC members' comments. Again, that does not fulfill the statutory obligations of a council that must act in a manner of having a motion or a referendum or some issue to make their recommendations and activities valid. Never done. To move on to a different issue, I would like to draw attention to the draft management plan table 4-1. Table 4-1 is called the Pinal AMA Agricultural Water Supply and Demand 2085 to 2017. The last column to the right calls itself the allotment. The other headings are use, and the last heading is allotment. Allotment isn't defined, but it seems like really it can be nothing other than the sum of all the base management plan, irrigation grandfathered right water duties. That would be what the allotment, I think, would mean. This figure of allotment for 2017 shows an allotment for the Pinal AMA agricultural water supply to be 624,366 acre feet. Very good. In the department's table that goes on the fourth management plan, which is summary number 1, which is a table of all the IGFR allotments, that sum is 898,107 acre feet. There is an enormous disparity between those two. And obviously, one or the other is wrong. It's interesting that this 898,107 acre foot allotment on irrigation grandfathered rights is actually over what the total agricultural demand was for 2017. I would certainly like to see this explained because it creates enormous confusion, and I do believe it also leads to conclusions that are improper. The GUAC has had various discussions since the beginning of the year that have always been exactly that. They have been listening sessions. They have been agenda-driven by the department, and the GUAC has not had an opportunity as an entity to comment on what is being said. We have asked many times. We have not had a meeting dedicated to discussion and formatting an opinion to give as a GUAC. One issue that has never been discussed and given action by the GUAC is the concept of including in audits a concept of crop type to be put down for data collection on an already existing statutory irrigation grandfathered right. That is a huge intrusion of privacy. It has never been discussed. There has never been issue in any manner so ever taken in a public fashion to comment on this, but it is in the plan at this time. Last issue that I probably have time for, there have been changes put together on the agricultural BMP program. There was a decision by the department to take a 10-point system and convert it to a 12-point system. I don't think that in itself is a problem. Most of the things done, I believe, are workable. They're not onerous. However, in farm irrigation systems category 2, we have taken the irrigation systems that we have prioritized, and we have totally changed the point values in such a way that is perfunctory arbitrary and doesn't reflect at all technical or efficiency concepts. In the original BMP, level irrigation systems, low pressure sprinklers, and trickle irrigation systems were all 3 points. What we have done now is we've taken level systems, we've kept them at 3 points, and taken low pressure and trickle and given them 25% more value. Technically, you might be able to achieve under best conditions 5 to 8% greater value, but nowhere near 25. To make matters worse, in the existing farm irrigation systems, series of systems, there are 7 different types of level systems and non-level irrigation systems that are listed. But under low pressure sprinklers, even though their efficiency doesn't anywhere justify the 25% increase in point value, it doesn't account for any fashion whatsoever of what the field conditions are underneath the sprinkler system. A sprinkler system on unlevel ground can be much less efficient than a sprinkler system on level ground. And it can also be much less efficient than a level basin irrigation system. So we have built into this proposal that a sprinkler system, if it's low pressure, regardless of the ground it sits on and possibly having much less efficiency than a level basin system, is going to have 25% higher points. There's nothing technically to justify this. It's an arbitrary decision to try to incentivize a different irrigation system. No thing other than that. And in fact, it will give point values to systems that are less efficient. Indeed, trickle irrigation systems can be very efficient, but they're very, very management intensive. And without the aspects of what needs to be done with those trickle irrigation systems, just like the original BMP point system spread, it doesn't guarantee any enhanced efficiency at all. It seems to me that the department was seeking an optic here. Not true efficiencies, not something that the industry works with, not exactly what happens in the field, but an optic. And again, the attempted discussions on this have been very difficult to even have with the department. But they have this here today, and it is in this promulgation hearing. And I would like the issues of the lack of efficiencies and the disparities addressed. And with that, I think I am almost used up my 9 minutes. I thank the hearing officer for the ability to testify.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir. Did we have any other cards for in-person? Nope. All right, let the record reflect that no one else wishes to speak in person. And that will move us on to our virtual speaker cards. So we will now begin calling the names of the persons who filled out the virtual speaker cards. If you're participating via the webinar and wish to speak and have not filled out a virtual speaker card, please submit the form available through the chat feature or at the web address that you see on the slide. I don't believe I will be calling the name. I believe one of the staff members will be calling your name. They will unmute you. So please state your name, identify any person or entity that you represent, and then give your comments. As a reminder, there's a 3-minute time limit. And with that.
This is McKenna Welsh. I will be reading the names of the speakers from the webinar speaker cards. So the first speaker we have is Dan Jones. Dan Jones, you are now unmuted.
Thank you. My name is Dan Jones. I'm counsel for Maricopa Stanfield and San Carlos Irrigation and Drainage Districts. The districts both have prepared some written comments that either have been submitted or will be submitted shortly, but they both share one kind of overarching concern they've asked me to highlight. There still seems to be pretty significant confusion, at least between the districts and the department, as to what the Pinal AMA management goal actually is. Overall, based on the department's framing of the issues and proposals and the stated departure from the prior plan depletion concept, whatever goal DWR wants to achieve in the 4th management plan looks an awful lot like safe yield. It's fair enough to use a term other than depletion to describe the goal. There's no doubt that Pinal AMA has some unique water challenges, but we can't lose sight of the fact that there is a statute that sets a particular management goal. That statute has to mean something, and whatever it does mean, it's pretty clear that it's not safe yield. It's really important that we all understand what the goal is. That goal sets the scope of how DWR is supposed to manage the AMA, and if we don't know what the goal is, we can't really figure out what we're trying to achieve and where we are at in the process. The districts appreciate that the department hasn't really proposed any dramatic changes to the substantive regulatory measures in the draft 4th management plan, but we still contend that it's absolutely critical that the department and stakeholders get together and actually come to a clear and shared understanding of what the goal is before DWR adopts any new regulatory measures that are based on a recharacterization of the purpose of the goal. And that's all we wanted to highlight. We appreciate DWR's consideration of the written comments. The districts are happy to answer any questions or provide any other information that might be useful in this process. Thanks.
Thank you. The next speaker is Brian Fetcher. And, okay, Brian Fetcher, you are now unmuted.
Okay. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, very good. I want to start out by saying that I'm recently retired from Maricopa Stanfield, so I'm speaking on behalf of myself as a citizen who's knowledgeable about what goes on in the Pinal AMA. I first want to agree with the comments of Scott Riggins, 100%, and with those of Dan Jones. I just want to highlight a couple of additional things that I think should be considered. The idea of modifying the best management practices in the 4th management plan is very, very late in the process, and several times along the way, the GUACs were hearing that there would be no changes to the conservation programs. As Scott pointed out, there's enough concern over how that's being done and how points are being weighted that I would recommend there's no reason why probably a more technical group be pulled together to do a more collaborative work on those BMPs. Wait for the 5th management plan to do it. You're talking about a 2-year difference between, and that is not going to upset the balance of management in the AMA. I highly recommend that. With that as well, I believe there needs to be more work done with defining equivalency between the base program and the BMPs. I just know how our farmers have proceeded over the years, and I think the overall effects in the basin is that it does come up to equivalency. There will be more groundwater pumping going forward, but the key question is, without the best management practices program, would there be more pumping than there will be with the program? And I don't know that that analysis look has been done. And with that, I will complete my comment.
Thank you. And the next speaker is David Snyder. David Snyder, you are now unmuted.
Thank you. My name is David Snyder. I've been a member of the Pinal AMA's Groundwater User Advisory Council for some 30 years. I currently serve as chair. I wish to substantiate Mr. Riggins' comments in that the department presented draft versions of the 4th management plan at several GUAC meetings. And it is true that members of the GUAC, the council, did at those 2 meetings speak to some issues that they had as individuals. However, there was never, ever any motion made or vote taken by the council to make a recommendation, aye, nay, or whatever, to the director as per statute regarding the 4th management plan. Subsequent to the last meeting of the Pinal AMA's council on May 27, we were notified that there was a deadline of, June 4th, I believe, and individual comments from board members, from council members were solicited, and I believe several council members did. I know I did. I believe there was another one. Again, however, there has never been a formal action by the Groundwater User Advisory Council regarding the 4th management plan. I want to thank the department. I understand the imperatives that are driving the calendar for this plan. I'm appreciative of the department's desire to accommodate that imperative, but I also want to make sure that the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And I do not see any other speaker cards at this time.
All right, thank you, McKenna. So if there's no one else who would like to submit a virtual speaker card, we will let the record reflect that no one else on the webinar wishes to speak. So that will move us to our telephone participants. McKenna, was there anyone who wanted to participate via the telephone or speak?
So I only see one telephone attendee who is not connected to the webinar. So I will unmute that call-in user again, just to see if they would like to state their name.
Okay, so if you're on the phone and you'd like to participate, just state your name and then your comments. If not, you just simply stay silent and we will move on. Okay, Okay, so hearing none from the telephone, I will call to the overflow room to see if there are any additional persons who wish to speak, and I see none. So we'll let the record reflect that there's no one in the overflow room who wishes to speak at this time. As I mentioned earlier, written comments on the proposed management plan may be submitted until 5 p.m. today. If you'd like to submit written comments after the close of the hearing, but no later than 5 p.m. today, please fax or email them to Sharon Scantleberry, the docket supervisor. Her fax number is 602-771-8686, and her email address is scantleberry@azwater.gov. Sharon's business card with her contact information are located on the table near the entrance if you would like one. This public hearing is now adjourned. Thank you all for attending and providing comments.